Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Can the folks at home just give me a thumbs up if you can hear me okay on the microphone? Anybody? Type something. Yeah, perfect, thank you.
Yes.
Some Google Meet savvy folks raising hands. I love it. So thank you all for joining us. I am Sean O'Brien, the Director of Guidance for the district, and I'd really like to welcome all of you to our Junior Parent Night. Wow, 2023. Holy cow. So this evening is always an opportunity for the guidance department to come together, welcome, with our 11th graders and their families to talk about what to expect from the next few months. Over the last few years of your child's high school career, they've been laying the groundwork for planning for life after high school, considering and contemplating what it is they would like to do for the remainder of their lives. Having conversations with you, their family, their counselors, their teachers about what their interests might be and what careers might connect with those interests. They've utilized Naviance, Family Connection, to take career interest inventories to begin to put a finer point on those interests. And now we shift into the more active phase, the post-secondary planning phase. For many of our students, that'll involve the college process. For many others, it'll also involve engaging with trade schools, engaging with different branches of the military. The guidance department will work together to identify the vocations, the colleges, whatever that route to your end path may be of your choice. That begins tonight. This part of the process focuses on the college application process, where we'll go over with all of you how that process will unfold over the next several months. We also have our additional post-secondary pathways planning night. That takes place on, I want to say February 6th. It's on the district calendar. February 8th. Thank you, Ms. Gluck. And that'll be to look at some of the other pathways for life after high school as well. Tonight focuses on college and the college process. As of tomorrow, our junior conferences and junior meetings begin, which will be the opportunity for all of you as a family to sit down with your child's counselor and develop that individual post-secondary planning roadmap. But right now, we're going to focus on the process at large, the nuts and bolts that apply to all of us, as well as some things that is important for each of us to keep in mind. While this is an individual process, there are many pieces to the puzzle that all of us have to go through with many different steps. So that's kind of what we get the opportunity to talk about tonight. So we'll go over some thoughts on planning the process a little bit. We'll break down the 4 W's and 1 H of the college application process at Wheatley. We'll give a brief overview of financial aid and what to expect there, and then just some closing reminders. So, and over the last few years, I've always liked to begin this evening by talking a little bit about planning your process, and most importantly, how we view success in this process. As someone who's been a guidance counselor and worked in the guidance world for over a decade now, and who recently had his oldest go through the college application process, I can speak from both sides of our particular coin tonight, the professional as well as the parent. And one thing I can say is it becomes very challenging because we begin to look at what we view success as in this process. And it becomes very easy to fall into one very locked definition of success. Success can start to begin to look like this one school or these 2 schools, this one bumper sticker on my car. My child really wants to be able to say they go to this school. And so I always find it important before we begin the evening, just to have a conversation about what success truly could and should be defined as when we approach this process. And it's very important for us as parents, as well as for our students, to remember success comes in many forms, many shapes, many sizes. And it's very important, especially as we're in the early days of the active phase of the process, not to cram it into one box and try to force it to fit in one particular cookie cutter shape. And I have this reminder here, and we'll see a clip from one of our previous junior parent nights in just a minute. But throughout this process, I said it to my daughter when she started. I've said it to every student I have had since I began my career at every junior conference. You will receive a rejection letter at some point. Maybe you won't, but by and large, based on the law of averages, I feel very confident standing up here and saying to you, at some point in this process, you will receive a rejection letter. That's okay. You will also receive several acceptance letters. And so as we enter into this process, a rejection to a particular school, a particular university is not a defeat. It's not a loss, nor is it a referendum on the work you have done throughout your time in high school. And I think that really, it bears remembering, because especially for us here at Wheatley, our students are so successful and they are so good at what they do that for some of us, a rejection letter to a college may be the first time we've gotten an answer we weren't exactly thrilled with in a high stakes situation. It's going to happen, but know that you've built the resilience necessary to overcome an answer you hadn't hoped for and still move in a direction where you will find success. And so the clip I'm going to play in a moment, hopefully it doesn't start on me. Good, it didn't. Is an excerpt from Junior College Planning Night from 2021. It was towards last year's seniors when they were juniors. And Topher Bordeaux, the admissions representative for our area from Dartmouth College, so an Ivy League university, spoke to our families about his perspective on the college process from that side of the table, as someone who will actually read students' applications from an Ivy League institution. And in the excerpt I've chosen, he gives his input onto what the process looks like and what that really means from someone who's reading the applications. So I'm going to press play on this now, and I'm hoping the folks in the chat will be able to hear it as well. I'm hoping we'll be able to hear it as well. If this is too loud, you know, there's a lot of red on that volume. Hold on. I don't need you folks going deaf on my watch. We'll hear Mr. Bordeaux's remarks and just listen to what he has to say about how this process looks and what really he has to go through in his decision-making process.
I'll just wrap up my remarks, and then if it's okay with Sean, I can take questions. With just a little bit about what happens after your students click submit. The work that my colleagues and I do, during the winter months, and what highly selective admissions really means. The short version is, it just means there are many, many more qualified candidates than spots. At some level, like evaluating, like ranking becomes silly. Really, we're not ranking the however many thousand kids apply and taking the top 1150. We're looking to build a class of 1150 separate, distinct, constructive, and exciting voices. I mean, we want them all to be different voices, bringing different perspectives, different backgrounds, different academic interests to campus. We need to be convinced that they can not just handle the rigor of a Dartmouth curriculum, but thrive in the rigor of a Dartmouth curriculum. And, our curriculum is a little bit different than other schools. We don't have semesters, we have academic quarters. They're 10 weeks long. The pace is a little bit quicker. Students take only 3 courses at a time instead of 4 or 5, but those courses move pretty quickly. So we're kind of looking for students who fit with that kind of curricular delivery. We're looking for students, again, who are going to contribute to our community and, who aren't just going to, survive here, but are going to thrive here and are going to help other students thrive too. So, it's the highly selective piece of that is really about looking for fit. Academics are a big part of it. I would say, broadly speaking, 2/3 of a class that applies is academically qualified to do the work. So if we have 25,000 kids apply in a year, let's say 16,000 kids roughly can do the work at Dartmouth, they would be fine. We could admit 1/10 of those kids. I would say of those 16,000, probably 8,000, have really eye-popping credentials. And, so about 1/3 of our pool is qualified to thrive at Dartmouth academically. And we could admit, 1/8 of those? So it becomes less and less about ranking and more about just looking at the perspectives students are going to bring to a class, trying to make nuanced decisions, trying to evaluate everything in a file and project like how that applies to our community. It is really difficult. I will say this. Right now I'm reading applications all day long every day, and it's very exciting because like in this part of the review process, I'm familiarizing myself with files. I'm making kind of an initial course sort, if you will. I think I mentioned that 2/3 of the students are qualified. The students who aren't qualified, I still review their file, but I might set it aside for a second colleague to look at to confirm that, like, okay, probably not qualified within the context of our pool. Doesn't mean the student's a bad student. No, the student's a great student. It's just our pool is very competitive. And then, later on this winter,
And so I play that clip to give a perspective as to some of the decisions the admissions representatives will be making as they read your files. And I always have to walk a very careful line here because I do not want to discourage. That is not the goal, nor is it the message any of you should take away. You will all find success in this process. However, again, if you receive a decision that you are not thrilled about, it is not a referendum on you and the work you have done through this process. You will still find success, and you will still find a place to call home that will lead you on to the next chapter of your life. But I do not want any of you to fall into the trap as you approach this process of identifying any one particular school, one particular university, one particular trade school, one particular, in some cases, branches of the military, as your sole definition of success. You will do well and you will receive an excellent education. The number of students who have gained admission to every Ivy League school in the country during their application process is fewer than 5. The last time I looked, it was 3, historically. It's not a typical thing to have happen. Students who receive acceptances to multiple Ivy League schools still, in most cases, are not accepted to them all. So as you approach this process, we as a guidance department emphasize for each and every one of you, focus on finding your fit with colleges. Schools that have the program you want, and I will continue to emphasize schools, plural. Schools that have the program you want. Schools that when you look at them, you say, I could see myself here. The faculty and what they offer is a match for what I'm looking for. Their reputation is what I'm looking for. The support that they provide to students, from what I'm hearing, is what I'm looking for. Identify multiple schools that fit your definition of what you're looking for. Because I promise you, no matter what your definition of the school or university you would like is, there are multiple colleges out there that fit that picture. There are multiple institutions that will provide each of the checkboxes on your list for what you need. The only thing no 2 schools have is the same name. Beyond that, there are many schools that will satisfy what you're looking for and provide you with the education you're hoping for. So as we approach this process, and the counselors will walk us through the nuts and bolts in it, be confident in the work that you have done to this point. Be confident in the activities resume you have built. Be confident in the transcript you are going to present. Be confident in the recommendations that you're going to get from the faculty here. Be confident in yourself as you write your personal statement and essay. And be confident that you are going to find success. And begin to consider tonight, moving forward, exactly what success looks like for each of you. What does that picture look like? And as you identify what that picture looks like, what career it is you'd like to pursue, what path you have to take to get to that career, begin to work together with the counselors here in this room and the members of your family who have gotten you this far in identifying the schools that will help you reach that end goal. So I will step aside now as we start to walk across the who, what, where, how, and when of this process. And I do recognize that we are competing with a playoff basketball game, or a pretty important basketball game. So I know some of you may be anxious to get to that, but we'll walk you through how to present yourself as to who you are as an applicant, what you're informing schools about in regard to your high school, what you've done in high school, how you will identify where you're going to apply, how you will identify the steps that you will take to complete that application, and when we should approach each part of the process. The college process, especially if the young person that you're sitting with in this room is your first to go through it, feels like a very big, very scary, very intimidating process. I promise you, as you get into it and break it down, it will shrink and become a much more manageable thing. We're here at the start of it right now, and we're going to work together, walk together to, from between now and, as far away as it sounds, November-ish of next year, get from beginning to end in terms of identifying schools and completing applications. We'll go a little bit later than November, but historical trends-wise, that's when most of our students finish their applications. So without talking and boring you anymore, to go over the sharing who you are as an applicant portion, I'll turn it over to Mrs. Schachter.
Good evening. So as I was sitting listening to Mr. O'Brien, I think that I can't believe that you're all juniors when I think about my junior class that I'm sharing, and I know the counselors feel this way. And what's exciting about this time of year is we have some students that are in our office all the time, and then we have students that have not needed to come in as much, maybe do things a little bit differently, more independently, but now we start to really work together. Now we start to meet on a regular basis. You could start making your appointments. And the message I want to give to all of you is none of you are late with anything. Nothing has happened yet. So as you're sitting here listening, this is what will be, okay? So if you're sitting here thinking, as I start to talk about the college essay, that you haven't started it, you should not have yet. This is all talking about starting today and moving forward to get you through this process with as little stress as possible. And I guarantee you there'll be some stress, but we're gonna get through this. If you follow our lead and our timeline and meet with us on a pretty regular basis, this is gonna be okay. So how do you let the college reps know who you are? You are each individuals. You are each going to write a college essay, which provides you the opportunity to share your voice and your creativity. So this is a one-page essay. This seems to turn up a lot of anxiety, and we love to help students with their essays. Chances are in the spring, your English teacher will also start to work with you on your essay. The writing piece must be engaging. That sounds sort of big, but it's going to be the voice of a 16 or 17-year-old. It should not be the voice of a 40, 50, 60-year-old. Reps know this. They want to hear from you, the students. They want to hear your voice. Yes, it should be proofread, but it shouldn't be broken up and torn apart by 10 different adults. You will lose your voice in that essay. You could Google at this point Common App and look at the essay prompts if you just want to get a sense of what you might be writing about. You might go home tonight and say, I know what I want to write about. You might have to do this for a while before you come up with the topic that feels comfortable. There are something called supplemental essays on the Common App, and those are often, but a lot of schools are asking for supplementals, but specifically for special programs or scholarships, you might be writing more than just your college essay. Chances are you'll be writing a few essays. Do not be too generic on the supplements, meaning if a school asks you why you are applying to that school, what they really want to know is, do you know who we are, or are you just throwing in another application? You have to take the time with the essays. We will go through this with you. We will make sure you understand the supplements, what the questions are. They get a little repetitive, but each time you write why you want to attend a certain school, we have to be very careful in the way that you word that so that that school knows that you are interested in them. Then there are optional essays. In my opinion, nothing's ever optional. If it's there and they say you can do this, you should do it. Down, right? Did it. Okay. Letters of recommendation. This is another way that the college rep will get to know you as they read your application. We will write, the school counselors will write a letter of recommendation for each of our students. So the more we meet and the more we speak and the more you do some other things we'll tell you to do, the better our letter will be when we write that letter. So whether you've been in our offices 100 times or 10 times, doesn't matter. We're going to get that information that we need from you so that we can write a really great letter of recommendation. There's something on Naviance that we'll talk about a little later, the brag sheet. That's going to give you an opportunity. Each student must fill out the junior brag sheet so that we can then craft a really great letter of recommendation for you. And you'll learn where to find the brag sheet. You should not have done it yet. We're going to say that these things should be done before the summer. And then I and the counselors probably agree. I love if a parent wants to email me or send me something that they're really proud of. I don't think any of you will have a problem with this, to write about things that you would like us to highlight in the letter of rec. So again, there's a lot of communication. Most of you will ask 1 to 2, preferably 2 teachers to write you a letter of recommendation. In fact, it should be 2 letters. Best would, ideally, it would be 2 junior teachers you have this year. But again, you're each individuals. You might have a really great connection with a teacher from 10th grade that you know you're going to have senior year, or you see in clubs, or you just continue to work with. So again, this is individual, but you will be asking in the spring, asking 2 teachers to write you letters of recommendation. Sometimes there could be additional letters. That's a discussion to have in our offices when we're talking about you. Students are encouraged to sign all waiver forms, waiving access to recommendation letters. We'll explain to you where to sign off on that. It makes the letters more credible. It means you can't read the letters of rec because you trust the people you ask to write letters on your behalf. Any questions about essays or letters of rec?
Is it one essay for all colleges or?
So there's one essay on the Common application that will go to all the schools. If most of the schools are on the Common App, I'm just going to keep it simple. So there's one essay. You could look it up at any time, Common App, essay prompt. I think there's 6 choices. You pick one. Student picks one. That's the letter. That's the essay, the Common App essay. Then each school, you'll see, might ask questions or might ask for an additional essay, depending on each school. It'll all become so much clearer once you're really doing this. Yeah, well, I promise. Any other questions? So what have I done to make me a qualified candidate? Mostly, you've attended school, you have a transcript from Wheatley. That transcript will have a 3-year weighted and unweighted GPA. So the transcript shows a GPA at the bottom of the transcript has weighted and unweighted. It will also have the courses that you're taking senior year. So very often a student will say, well, what's the difference what I take senior year if the GPA is done and it's a 3-year GPA? The colleges will look on the transcript that we send that the classes you have for senior year. Do you want to continue to grow and do whatever makes sense for you with the courses? Yes.
So the 3-year would be 9, 10, and 11?
Yeah, and some of 8. If your student took 8, yes, Regents courses in 8th grade. So what are the colleges looking for in the transcript? They're looking at the level of rigor and course discipline. That does not mean they're counting up APs. Please know that. APs are not appropriate for everyone at the same time, the same quantity. This is a very individual process. You want to continue to grow in the way that you have been at Wheatley. Okay? You don't want to take it easy senior year. but you don't want to overwhelm yourself where you can't find success. The days of senioritis, have you guys even ever heard that word? Because when I was growing up, senioritis was a real thing. You were done at the end of 11th grade. Not so anymore. Senior year has become more important than ninth grade. Colleges are more interested. What are you doing when you step on our campus right now than what you did 3 years ago? So senior year is really important. So we're doing course selections now. That's really important. We will have you all in. We would talk about your course selections because it's really important. Colleges might ask for first quarter or mid-year senior grades, and you will get a final grade point average upon graduation. Another way to let the colleges know who you are is through an activities. I'm going to lose my voice. Activities resume. Okay, I'm done. I'm sorry. I was trying, but it's just going to get ugly. I'm sorry.
I'm next anyway, so hi, good evening. So to go into the activity resume, you know, Ms. Schechter just speaks very eloquently though about explaining everything, but the activity resume is another important piece to complete the college puzzle for you. So the extracurricular activities, those are things that you are doing inside of school and outside of school from grades 9 through 12th grade. So many of you have already logged into Naviance. You should be logged in and know how to get in. And with that, we want you to complete that activity resume. You should be adding each year to it, whether it's community service, athletics, musical talents, awards, summer and work experiences, leadership opportunities. What I like to say is quality over quantity. They also know, colleges know that you have been impacted by COVID-19. There were times where you weren't able to be maybe as engaged, or you engaged in a different way. I don't want to say things are 100% normal, but we're more back to the norm this year in terms of the accessibility of activities. Again, it's not about you putting on that resume that you have that you've been in 7 different clubs. They want to know how you have engaged in the club. Are you attending, you know, weekly at the club? Have you participated in a particular activity? You may not be the leader of the club. You may not be the president of every club or the co-president or the secretary or hold a position, and that's okay. As long as you are showing your growth within attending and being part of something that's important to you. The other piece is that maybe you took on a big responsibility as a member of the club. So that's a good thing to show. I don't want you to diminish work experience as well. Some of you have jobs outside of school. That is wonderful. If you held a job, I've had students hold a job 9 through 12 at the same place. That just shows that you are responsible. It gives you a tremendous amount of customer service skills as well. And that you can handle doing your coursework at school as well as a job and possibly some other clubs. This is, again, something also, it's not going to look individualized. It's not going to look the same for every student in this room. You might have some similar activities, but you want to make sure that you highlight, and we can look over it with you. We want to, and we're going to ask you to complete one in Naviance. Activities on the Common application should be listed in order of importance, and that's something that we'll discuss next year. So having that resume fine-tuned now will only help us discuss, you know, the importance of which ones you should add, because Common App only gives us small space to add the activities as well. So students testing with accommodations. The SAT, testing with accommodations. So there's a few pieces to just know. We apply for the accommodations at the end of 9th grade through College Board. So if you are a student who receives any services through 504 or you have an IEP, you may have been given a paper from either Dr. Maza, one of the special ed teachers, or Mr. Kimmel. You will be signing a paperwork at that point for the school to release your records to the College Board. Following College Board's review, not Wheatley review, this is separate from any Regents exams and school-based testing, the College Board dictates what services you would receive, and you are provided with what's called an SSD number, so Service for Students with Disabilities number. That is your number Most of you will have that number already. You may not know it off the top of your head, but would have that number from the time that the accommodations were approved through your graduation here at Wheatley. So when you're registering for any SATs, you must provide College Board with your child's SSD number. For the PSATs, which were in-house, those students would have received their accommodations, and any of those advanced placement exams, if you are taking them, you already have that SSD number, then you would receive the accommodations. We know the internal accommodations for that. But those are very specific, not Wheatley accommodations, they're College Board, and that is only for the SAT, not the ACT. The ACT testing, unlike the SAT, you apply for testing accommodations. So that is done through Mr. Kimmel in our administrative office. He will apply for your testing accommodations at the time of each registration. So anytime you log into act.org and you register for a test, it's going to prompt you and ask, do you receive any accommodations at school? If the answer is, or do you have an IEP or a 504 plan, you would check off what you have. He receives notification and he sends off the documents. Again, what your accommodations are here at Wheatley may not necessarily reflect what they are for that ACT, so just be mindful of what it says. But I will say that if you do have some form of document, they've been pretty comprehensive in reviewing and then giving back a decision that's very similar with the accommodations, if not the same. But again, SAT, you have that number and that takes you through all the College Board exams. ACT, it's every individual ACT you have to apply for that accommodation. Students should plan to sit for these exams in the spring. So I know there's a lot of buzz about, like, should we be taking tests because many schools are test optional? The answer is we're telling our students, yes, sit for the test, because there are colleges that will not continue test optional. And that's changing as, you know, we move a little bit further from being in the height of the pandemic. There are some schools or specialized programs that may require you to have an SAT or ACT. There are schools that will continue to that test optional policy. So we want to make sure that you have ample time to test. We want to make sure that you are sitting for these exams and just have that opportunity. We will help you and guide you whether or not it makes sense to provide the school with a test, your testing information. We're only going to provide the schools with information that's helpful towards your application, not something that would sort of be a detriment in the process. But we want you to test. Which test should you take? Either one. SAT or ACT, they are different in terms of how they are presented with the material. I would recommend personally sitting for both of them, or at least sitting for some practice and seeing what works for you. And then you can really decide which one you want to focus on. But either one is accepted and suitable for colleges. Information regarding the preparation for these exams can be found in Mr. O'Brien's January mailer. He'll link that. So when this gets sent out, and then spring dates for the exams held at Wheatley. March 11th is the SAT exam. April 1 is an ACT exam. It's for Wheatley only students. We are not an ACT testing site. So when you go in, you need to use the code 001090. You'll get more information as it gets closer as a reminder as well. For a complete list of the examinations, you can go to collegeboard.org or act.org. So where do I plan to spend the next 4 years of my life? So the biggest thing that you can take away from this meeting, in my opinion, is the fit. And Mr. O'Brien mentioned that. We want to help you find where you are going to be happy, where you're going to thrive, that comfort. We want to make sure the school is right for you. How are we going to do that? There's a lot of factors that go into it. I have many students come into my office and say, I want to go to a good college. What's a good college? I don't know. There's so many good colleges, great colleges, fantastic colleges, but it's different for every student. And I like to use the example of and most of my students chuckle, and maybe my colleagues too, but I often say, you know, would you ever consider Oklahoma University? Or Oklahoma City University, actually. I know Oklahoma has the Sooners, but Oklahoma City University, that happens to be one of the top schools for musical theater. If you are a musical theater major, that might be a great fit for you. If you are not, may not. Maybe you don't want to go all the way to Oklahoma for college. But what a good school for one student is not necessarily a good fit for another student. So the strength of the program is important to look at. The major, does the school have your major? You don't have to know your exact major right now, and we'll help you maybe narrow down some ideas for that, but we want you to have ideas of what you're good at, what you might be considering. So if you're telling me that you might consider architecture and you're looking at a school that doesn't have that as a major, that might not be a best fit for you. Typical student admission profile. So you want to make sure that you're seeing, do you want a large school? Do you want a small school? You know, you go to Wheatley. You are a very small school across Long Island. And then I have students say, I want to go to this really massive school that has 40,000 undergraduate students. Think about how many students you're going to have in that class. A lecture hall could have over 400 students in it. Or do you want more personalized class sizes where you might only have about 50 students in the classroom? So when you see the student to faculty ratio, that's important to see how many faculty members the school has, but at the same time, what's really important is the class sizes. So always ask that when you're looking at the colleges. Another factor is the location. Some of you don't mind to be across the country. Parents, some of you want your child closer to home. Do you want to have accessibility to drive home that evening, or do you want to be a plane flight away? That's a family decision. That's something of comfort. So we want to make sure that we look at that location. We also want to know, do you want to be in a city or do you want to be on a more college campus feel outside of a city? How close do you want to be? Cost. We know there are colleges that are, some cost more than others. State schools are definitely, in terms of affordability, cheaper, but they may not give you as much scholarship money as possibly a private school. I always say when you're looking at the colleges, when your academics are here and, the college's standards are here, you might see more money at some of those schools, which might be helpful and make some of those schools more affordable as well. And support. So if you are a student who has a 504 or an IEP, any form of disability, or need mental health access on a campus, those are important factors to look at what resources the colleges have for that. Naviance and Family Connection. So Naviance and Family Connection is a comprehensive college and career tool. How many students in here remember going on over the past 2 years and doing some career explorations? So you've taken some personality profilers, you've been taking some career profilers. As I've mentioned to all my students, Naviance is a locker. That information doesn't get sent off to the colleges, but it's a way for you to store and revisit and look at the information that you have work through your time here at Wheatley. So students use Naviance to help identify areas of interest. You'll be able to help translate that into what might work for you in the future career-wise. So I often have students come up and they say agricultural or farming as an option. And we're like, oh, do we want to be a farmer? Maybe, but you might like working with your hands. So then we start relating that at the younger grades now with the different electives we have here. But we can talk about what type of careers would work well for you down the line in college. As students proceed through their junior year, the college search, we will discuss this at our individual planning meetings, how to do some appropriate searches for you. And then next year, you're going to get information about college rep visits. So that is when we have the colleges connect here at Wheatley for the students. You'll sign up, and at that point, you'll be able to meet directly with the representative who is likely reading over your application. Very important to connect with them. Again, the search tool, there's very specific criteria that you could put in, everything from the size of school to sports that you might want, the division. So we can make this, I usually during my junior meeting with my students, I will go through one search just so you can see some of the criteria and how to utilize that information. Because it might say and come up with a match that's 80%, and you might not look over, you might look over that piece, but we have to look at the why it's 80%. Is it 80% because you put a criteria of 10,000 students and the school has 14,000 students? We have to see why. We want to make sure it's correct for you. Additionally, there's this feature called the scatogram. This is a sample of what the scatogram shows. Essentially, there's a key here. If you see the marker right over here, this would be you. It is all anonymous. You will not be able to see any other student in Wheatley. But what it does is you can pull down the SAT or ACT score and correlate it with your GPA and look at individual particular schools and look at the averages and see how you fare in comparison with other students from Wheatley. The one caveat that I will mention is that Naviance isn't sophisticated enough, and also because students have the option at many of the schools over the past couple of years to go test optional, it doesn't factor in the test optional component of it, but it is a great resource to kind of see where you fit academically to the school's standards and what they're looking for. It will have your SAT and ACT information in there, provided that you took it, and at that point, it would be uploaded into Naviance. Campus visits. As you continue to gather information, it's really important to determine whether the campus is the right fit for you. So when you schedule a tour through the Office of Admissions, you want to make sure that you're actually taking an organized tour there, that you're not just having your friend give you the tour. That's great. We want them to show you the ins and outs, but registering through the Office of Admission logs you into their school. There are schools such as like Northeastern, at Tulane, they're huge with what's called demonstrated interest. That can make or break, you know, a deferral from a school or an admittance to a school showing that interest. I'm not saying the tour is going to get you into the school, but we want to be proactive, and when we're on a campus, we want to engage with the admissions as much as possible. You want to try the food on the campus, read the newspaper, see the current climate, the issues that are going on in terms of, you know, what's important at the school, because we want to make sure that it matches your belief system as well. This is where you're going to find home, and we want to make sure you feel comfortable. Look at the dorms. You know, they're very different than your bedrooms at home, and you might be sharing it with somebody. So those are things to consider, or asking if, you know, you're not interested in sharing that, do they have the option of a single? College representative visits, as I mentioned at the beginning of September in your senior year, you're going to have the opportunity to meet with admissions. We're going to put that information on Naviance. The students will be allowed to go on to Naviance. You'll see the dates they're coming, and you'll sign up for those visits. The complete list of rep visits each fall will be under the visit section in Naviance, and we can show you that at your individual planning meeting. You must pre-register in order to attend the rep visit and still make up the work in your class if you missed the class. I'm going to now turn it over to Ms. Silverstein, and she's going to talk about the how.
The first question is, how is everybody doing?
Tired.
Tired. Me too. All right. So we've heard a lot about the college admissions process, things we should be doing, things we should be looking at. That's the research and development phase. So now what I'm going to touch on a little bit is how it all comes together. Now, you don't have to take notes just yet, because we do review this all in senior year and in our individual meetings. So don't, by any means, please do not get nervous with what I'm about to share. Okay, so there are different types of applications. Can they hear me at home? Okay, good. So there's different types of applications. Mrs. Schachter touched on the common application. That application is accepted by hundreds and hundreds of colleges throughout the country. Now, that's you fill out a main application, you have your supplemental applications for each school, and it links directly with Naviance. Again, stuff you don't have to worry about just yet. We'll walk you through it. You could only apply to 20 schools on the common application. So if your list starts coming together, you start to say, I have 21 schools. What do I do? We talk about it. We figure out a game plan. There's the coalition application, which is also for specific schools. Many of the schools on the coalition application want you to do what we call a self-reported listing of your high school grades. Some of you who already have students in college might have heard about the SRAR or the SSAR, different student reporting systems, again, we look at what the colleges you're applying to, we look to see what their requirements are, and we make checklists with your students to make sure that they are meeting all of the admissions requirements and all of the different pieces of the puzzle for admissions. Then you also have school-specific applications, and those could be the SUNY application, although a lot of the SUNY schools are on the Common App. The CUNY, that is a completely separate application, and then you have individual schools, for example, Rutgers. They have their own application on their website. Typically, students, if you're filling out the Common Application, as you're filling out the other apps, you can use your essay, you can use the other resources that you're using to fill out the Common App to fill out the other applications as well. Okay, here's the fun stuff. How do I submit my application? What do I have to do? So, as you're getting closer to submission dates, we do ask that you meet with your guidance counselor. We do ask for a 2-week or so window prior to your deadline date. There's lots of checks and balances that we have to do to make sure that your stuff gets out on time. There's a student deadline, and then guidance has a little bit of a different deadline. Students, how many students are in the room right now? A few? Okay. College deadlines are not like Wheatley deadlines. Okay? You cannot get a 1-day extension with the Common Application. You cannot say that the dog ate my Common App, can I have another one? If you miss the deadline on the Common Application, you have to go to the next round, whatever that is. So if you're going from early action to regular decision, there's no leeway with their deadlines. So keep that in mind. We work on matching Naviance on the Common Application together. That is how we send your electronic documents. Students are responsible for submitting their application. And what that means is on the Common App that all the green checks are checked off for that application. And it says submitted. I'll never forget one year I had a student think that they submitted their application and they submitted the supplemental, they submitted the payment, and they never submitted the actual application. So things do happen, checks and balances, make sure everything's submitted, log out, log back in, make sure it still says submitted. Transcript request forms, transcript verification forms, that's all stuff that we review in September as well. A transcript request form. Do you have a sample of what it looks like? On the next slide. So this is a transcript request form. So I know I just skipped over a little bit. I will go back. So what you're going to do is you fill this out. You write the name of the school, how you're applying, what the deadlines are, Common App, sign the bottom, and you hand that into your guidance counselor. With that, again, I'm all about checks and balances. We take this form, we look at Naviance, we look to make sure that everything's collected the right way. Any school that's not on Common App, we manually add. Common App and Naviance are merged, so it should mirror each other. Transcript verification form must be submitted with student and parent signatures. I'll get to that in 1 second. Mr. Schachter or Ms. Gluck touched on the student college brag sheet on Naviance. We also have an activity resume on Naviance. Again, this is prep work that you can do to help you get ready to fill out your applications. And we can help you match all your applications when it's time. Okay, transcript verification form. In September, you'll be getting an email through Parent Square with your student's transcript. It's a digital copy. You're going to review it. There'll be a link for a Google form that says that I approve my transcript, or there's an error in my transcript. Please correct this. That comes to us, and then we move forward with it. If anything needs to be adjusted, we adjust it, and then we'll share a new transcripts with you. SWS, how many SWS students do we have? Okay. You will speak with Pat Clark, and you're going to ask for the SWS transcript form. It's a Google form. A Google document. You type in all of your SWS classes. So the colleges can not only get your Wheatley transcript, they get your SWS transcript. So they see the 5, the 6, the 7 classes that you're taking, each module, and how you're doing in those classes. Okay, and obviously student and parent signatures are required. Okay, back to our little handy dandy form. What do we do with this? Students fill this out, they hand it in. The student says, oh, Mrs. Silverstein, I need to add another school. Fill out another form, bring it in to me. This is just our way to keep track of what you're applying to make sure, again, checks and balances, that these forms match what's on Naviance for us. Dr. Warner is going to take over for Wen.
Good evening, everyone. So we've been talking a lot about timing, and I know that this is probably like the biggest key to the process. If this is something that you or your students have challenges with deadlines, timing, please let us know. We'll help you. We'll bug you about this. You will get so many emails and alerts from the school, from us. If you open things, it's almost impossible to miss. But, you know, we are going over a lot of information tonight. This is just a glimpse. So I like to use Labor Day as our main target. So if you think of Labor Day of your senior year as like your real key to the process and working backwards. So between now and September is the critical period. Between now and I would say June or so, you are going to have the opportunity, as Ms. Gluck mentioned, at Wheatley to take SAT or ACT exams. I definitely recommend taking both at some point of practice to see where your strengths lie, which one you're more comfortable with. But you should be sitting for this exam, one of these exams, before June to have in your pocket. This is something that, you know, if you take it sooner than later, you're opening a few more opportunities to take these exams prior to that Labor Day or like fall of your senior year. So again, I'm using Labor Day because we want to front load as much as we can before the beginning of your senior year. Many of you have already started making appointments on Calendly to see us. So if you saw the link for this evening, Mr. O'Brien included a link to schedule an appointment for your junior planning conference. That's going to be our kickoff. So between now and February, if you haven't done so already, please make an appointment and you'll meet with the counselors individually with your student to discuss everything that we went over tonight and figure out a plan of how this specifically works for you and your family. In the spring, students here may actually have an idea of who they would like to ask for those letters of recommendation. As we previously mentioned, the counselors will all be writing letters automatically for you. So that's one that you have out of the way already. You don't have to ask us. But start to really brainstorm which teachers know you best. And this doesn't mean the teachers where you may have received or earned A's in their classes. In fact, some of the more challenging courses you've encountered may be the teacher or faculty member who you would want to ask to talk about your perseverance or your struggles or how you overcame certain obstacles. So start reflecting on that. In our junior planning conference meetings, we will ask you, like, offhand who you think you may ask. It could be more than 2 teachers as well. I would not exceed 4 or 5. That's a lot. Many schools won't take that many. But if you have a lot of connections and don't know how to narrow it down, we could certainly discuss that more. And starting at this point, you can begin the college brag sheet and the activities resume that we're discussing. It would be to your benefit to have this completed prior to summer vacation. The reason is many faculty members, including us, will begin writing your letters over the summer. So if you are thinking about anything and most of your work and volunteer hours and everything is either taking place right now or has already passed. So start doing that for yourself. This is only going to help you in the process. And again, like, we're trying to lighten the load for you in the fall. So if you can complete this sooner than later, it's definitely helpful. And this is where students, please ask your parents for support with this. If there's an award or something that may seemingly be insignificant to you, your parents will certainly remember it and write that down. As Mr. Bordeaux mentioned from Dartmouth, you don't know what character traits or specific things that they're looking for. So when in doubt, just add everything. They are building a unique class and, handpicking these students. So I would really, really recommend having a family conversation about what you feel should be included. In the summer is when you should be really focusing on your personal statement or your college essay. This is, I think, everyone has their own process with this. Bullet points, brainstorming, traits, characteristics that you want the institution to know about you is a great place to start. And again, this can be a family conversation. You know your students best. Our students are incredible. They've been very successful, but don't be humble. This is the time to really put everything out there. I think it's worth it to create a list of bullet points of things that you would like included in this personal statement. And as something more creative comes to mind, you can intertwine that, leading that golden thread through your application. So what is a common theme that you would like them to see? Is service something that is really important to you? And you can tell a story through your personal statement, your experiences. Maybe you have volunteer hours. Maybe you've done certain activities at school through National Honor Society or an organization, maybe music or art. And just having that reoccur throughout your personal statement, your activities, your resume, this all builds together. And then, of course, in the letters of recommendation, those things will be included as well. You can also begin building your college list at this time. This is a great time in the spring of your junior year to start to think about it, but in the summer is really when you should be considering, these are my core institutions where my focus and drive is going to be. You should be starting to look at what is required. So do those institutions require testing? Are they test optional? If you are deciding to go test optional, what are you sending that will have you stand out aside from those scores and statistics? So these are all things to consider. If there's an institution that you've had in the back of your mind, since you were a young child, or maybe it's an institution in your family, take a look at that website. There's no harm in taking a look, looking to see what their admissions page represents. That's a great way to get a snapshot about what the school may be like. So over the summer is really when you should be doing that, and visiting institutions, looking at their virtual tours and opportunities online is really like the key time for you. And then finally in the fall, so in late September through early November, if you need to sit for another exam, you can do that at that point. I really feel like it would be great to be finished with those before your senior year. So look at those test dates now to try to plan ahead. But if you do need to do that, the fall is available. And then we will be meeting with you frequently. We will look at your transcripts, we'll be processing your documents. But this is really the time, again, like, please feel free to reach out to us. No question is too silly. Email us, call us. I always tell our students, I don't want you to be worried about something. If something is keeping you up at night, please let us know. It's probably a question we can answer fairly quickly for you. If we don't know the answer, we'll help you get the answer. So it is a very stressful process, but we are here to help you through it as much as possible. And then the last piece that is separate from the application, and this is really more of a family focus, is the financial aid information. So the FAFSA form is the federal funding information, and that application opens in October. And I'll speak to that a little bit more in a moment. You've heard us talk a lot about like different types of applications, but there are also different types of deadlines. So ED, or early decision, is a binding agreement. This is something that is really, if you are fully committed to this institution, financially, academically, and you know that this is where you really, really see yourself and your family is comfortable sending you here, this is, a very unique path. I think there are students who know that they would love to attend this one institution. This is a type of application that you can look for. Binding means, though, that you are allowed to apply to other institutions. However, if this dream school accepts you, you are signing off that you will attend, absolutely. So, it's a great option if you really love a place. If it might be a little bit of a stretch for you, or, a reach, it does show the institution that you are fully committed and really interested, but it is a binding agreement. And I do just caution families with the financial aspect as well. So you're signing to say that you are prepared to pay that full tuition, or whatever their package is that they assign to your family. Early action has the perks of early decision. However, it's not binding. So it is an early deadline. It's again, usually by mid-December. Some of them are very early. Some of them are November, and some are even October 15th. So you're really, really looking at these deadlines sooner than later. But it's not binding. Therefore, you do not need to attend the institution if you are accepted. Rolling admissions is exactly as it sounds. So as the applications roll in, they're read, and the admissions office will assign a determination. Really, some are within a few weeks. Regular decision, most of those deadlines are in January, but could be really like through March. And this is something where our students may even have like 2 application cycles. So as Mr. O'Brien mentioned earlier, many of our students here at Wheatley are finished with their applications in November, let's say. You could really have a whole other process or list of schools in January if you chose to do so. Not that that is recommended, but if you needed, that's available. And lastly, there's single choice early action or restrictive early action. And you'll find this at many selective competitive institutions. It is non-binding as early action. However, you are not permitted to apply to other private institutions as an early action or early decision candidate. So, for example, if you were applying to Wheatley University as REA or restrictive early action, that would be the only early institution on your list. Every other school would either be regular decision or rolling admission. And again, we will walk through this with you as it goes, but just to familiarize yourself with the terminology. Scholarships and financial aid will be the second step or phase of the process. So once your students are completed with the applications, you can begin this component. So the FAFSA, which is the main financial aid document, becomes available October 1st every year. You need to utilize the previous 2 tax years, all of the forms from your federal funding and income in order to complete this. It is pretty it's very tedious to complete, but it is self-paced and self-explanatory. You can do this online. And I would highly encourage our students to sit with your parents to do this. This is a form that needs to be completed throughout your years of study. So as an undergraduate student in graduate school, medical school, law school, you will complete the FAFSA. It would be helpful for you to experience what that's like with your family. Once you submit that, there is something that's called the CSS profile. So the FAFSA is public, that's through the federal government. The CSS profile is a private opportunity through the College Board, which is that same company for AP exams and the SATs. This is a unique profile in that it will actually, the aim is that institutions strive to get a greater picture of the student. For example, if your family has unique medical obligations and has spent a lot of money on treatments or something of that nature, that is taken into consideration. It also does standardized cost of living throughout different areas of the country. So for example, if you're applying to a school in the Midwest, students who are applying from the Midwest to that same institution, their cost of living, their mortgage rates are very different from that of Roslyn Heights or Old Westbury. So again, the institutions will look at both of those and then see if there's any funding that would be available to you to try to standardize that for the other families. We do have financial aid evenings, and they'll be held in early October. You can also see the recordings from previous years on our guidance website if you'd like to find more information about that. But other than those profiles, on Naviance, there are tools that have scholarship exploration tabs. There are other systems like FastWeb, scholarships.com, even through the College Board, where there are a lot of different corporations and areas that do offer awards to students, but you do need to look for them. Some of them may require you to write an essay, and it might be a small gift of, $500. It might be thousands, but it is worth exploring. And this is why I say it really becomes relevant in the second phase of this process, because once the students are finished with their applications, they can really focus on this application component. So if you do have questions about this, we're happy to address them. But as we mentioned, as we go through this, we will help you through it. So I will turn it back to Mr. O'Brien.
Okay. So I know there's a very good chance that each of you are out there right now and you're thinking, the man in front of me is a liar. He started this night and swore that this process would shrink down and become simpler and easier. And instead, they just threw a ton of information at us all night. They're talking about websites, CSS profile, FAFSA, College Board, ACT. Where am I supposed to start? Common App, Coalition App. Pause and relax. Your counselor will sit with each of you individually to reaffirm this. I do not expect anyone in this room tonight, even those who have had children go through the process already, to remember each and every step of the way. One of the positive things to come out of the pandemic is the advent of streaming these webinars as we did tonight. It also allows us to record it. So all of the information we've provided has been recorded. So if sitting through an hour and 20 minutes of this was not enough for you, you can go home and do it all over again as much as you would like. I'll be sharing out the recording as well as the presentation slides tomorrow morning. It'll be posted on our YouTube channel. So if there's any piece that we went through that you're a little fuzzy on that you don't remember, you can, of course, call your counselor, call the guidance office and ask the question, but you can also go back to the recording. You can scrub back and forth, and you can go through as is needed. So that being said, the main takeaways for our 11th graders from tonight. Your next step, your next action item is, if you haven't already done so, go onto the Calendly link that I shared out on Friday. It's also posted on the guidance department website. I believe it was also linked in Mr. Wiener's weekly email update. Click the link for your counselor, schedule your individual meeting, and you'll begin your planning process from there. Beyond that, each of you should be, if you took the PSAT or practice ACT this past fall, review your scores from that. If you did not get your score report, because I know a couple folks have emailed me and I've tried to get back to as many as I can, I don't know that all the PSAT score reports, PACT score reports, practice ACT went out. Come down to the guidance department, check in with me. I can email you a copy or I can get you a hard copy. Review those results and start to identify which of those exams you'd like to take, which you felt more comfortable taking. If you didn't take a practice exam, that's fine. Begin to prep to take one of those exams. See how your score is. You can either sit for a second one in the spring, or as we've said, sit in the fall and take another score. You can take those exams as many as you like. The colleges will super score your outcomes. So if you do better on a second test in one section, but not as well in the other, they'll take your highest scores from each section of the test, and they'll put them together. So it's to your advantage. So you can utilize this spring to be prepping for that. Begin to consider which teachers you'd like to write your letters of recommendation and ask them before the school year ends. That's your main focus right now. Continue to do the same high quality level of work that you've done throughout high school. Finish junior year strong. Meet with your counselor to discuss your plan. Focus on the SAT or ACT and finish out this spring. Move into the summer, as that timeline described, you can begin to do the essay. But for right now, we're focusing on academics and we're meeting with our counselor individually. That being said, in terms of those junior conference counselor links, I've linked them here as well. As I said, I will share these slides out, so that will be a clickable link in the email I send. One note that I did not take into account when blocking out the counselor schedules. Next week is midterm week. So if you were planning your child's conference and they were not in the room with you, you may have booked it during one of their exams. So just make sure if you booked a meeting for next week that your child doesn't have a midterm exam scheduled. If they do, reach out to your child's counselor. They can shift the appointment, but the counselors are still able to hold meetings during midterm week as long as your child is not testing. So let's just make sure we do that. Secondly, and I touched on this a little bit, the East Williston Counselors Corner YouTube channel. Each of these evening events that we've held for the last 3 years now has been recorded and posted there. So, oh, really? We're winning, apparently. Yeah, you don't have to listen to me, Valerie. You can go. So any of those events will be recorded and posted there. Not just junior parent nights, but topics such as Naviance. We touched a little bit about Naviance before, but I also have breakdowns of how the different assessments that your children have used in the earlier years at Wheatley can be utilized, as well as the tools that they'll be using in the upcoming process. The college search, the scattergrams, there's a more detailed breakdown there. So just make sure to utilize the Counselor's Corner YouTube channel as well. And then finally, we talked about deadlines, but first and foremost, students, just make sure you're prioritizing the schools that are the right fit for you. Begin to think about what's important to you. We discussed a lot of those factors that you should be considering tonight. The academic program of study, the location, the supports that are on campus, the feel of the campus when you go to visit. You're making a decision as you approach the college process as to where you'll be spending, for the most part, the next 4 years of your life. We want to make sure it's a place that's a fit for you. Focus on the school, on the institution, beyond the name. Make sure that they have all of those pieces needed for that to be where you'll be happiest over the next several years. So with that in mind, I'd like to thank you all for coming. For those of you who do not want to run off to the game, I'll open it up to questions. Please feel free to ask anything you'd like. And for those of you who are going to be stepping away, thank you for coming.